Welcome to my Introduction to Programming course. This is Raul Vargas. This is the introduction lesson, lesson one. So I'm going to start out with opening up the Alice webpage, which you can get to by going to alice.org and telling you a little bit more about what Alice is and how you can get your hands on it. So Alice is a free tool that is made by Carnegie Mellon, or it's worked on by a team at Carnegie Mellon. This is the Alice webpage. So you can download it here. There's tons of resources. There's a community with a forum where you can ask questions, and you can come here and get more details about Alice. But where I actually want to point you to is downloads. So the version of Alice that we're going to use in this lesson is Alice 2. So there is a newer version called Alice 3, but Alice 2 seems to be more stable to me. It's been around longer. There's more resources for it, and it accomplishes the task. So it's the one I use with my students. I'll probably eventually move over to Alice 3, but this one does the job. So one thing you'll notice is that Alice 2 comes for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So you're pretty much covered. That's pretty much every operating system I've ever seen being run on a computer, desktop, or a laptop. So I'm on a Mac, so obviously I click on Mac, and what you actually download is a zip file. So it says DMG because I'm on a Mac, but if you were on Windows, it would be a zip file. And one nice thing about Alice is that it is a portable file. What that means is once it's done downloading, you just click on it to run it. It'll appear just like this, and you run it and it just works. So this is great for schools because a lot of schools have restrictions on installing software, and this is one software that you don't really install, you just run it. So once this is done downloading, you'll get a folder and it has Alice inside of it and some files. You can't delete the files, you need to leave the files there in the same directory. But let me actually open up Alice now. So I'm going to close this window. And while that's loading up, let me tell you what Alice is. Alice is a 3D programming environment. It's not a 3D graphics editor. It's an environment where you actually write code and you create little animations and eventually little interactive games that you can play. So this is the welcome window. You have different templates, you have tutorials that you can start with, you can open a world, there's some examples that you can check out. And actually I'm just going to close this, and that leaves me with a blank file that is open to a grass template. So I just want to talk a little bit about the interface. So up here we have our menu, and so there's a file. You can open up files, you can save worlds, you can export your code if you want to share code with people. Preferences, I won't go into all of these. You can kind of play around with them at your own leisure. You don't really have to go there too much. Tools, again, I've never really used these. World statistics could come in handy if you've created a very a big world and it's having issues running. You can come in here and check how many, like maybe you have lots of polygons or lots of texture, and a lot of texture memory being used, and it's overloading your RAM. You can kind of use this to help you troubleshoot, help kind of the basic things, and help tutorials, example worlds, information about Alice. All right, so then over here we have one of our main views. There are two main views in Alice. This is the method and event editor view. So I'll start. I guess I'll start right here. This is the play button. This allows you to play your world. Undo and redo, pretty self-explanatory. Allows you to undo your last action. The little trash can, you can drag objects in there to delete them. Over here we have our object tree. This is all the objects in the world. Right now there's a camera, there's light, and there's ground. Eventually this will be populated with all the different objects and things you've added to your world. Right here is the object details. This allows you to access an object's properties, methods, and functions. Now, I know that's a lot, but we actually don't get into this for until the third lesson or so you don't really have to worry about these too much just yet. Right here's a little preview window. allows you to see what your project looks like. Obviously it's smaller when you hit play over here. It appears a lot larger. So right here are some camera controls. Allows you to change the view where you're starting out at. This button will hold off on this because I'm going to go back to this in a second. This is the events window. Alice is event driven, which means that any code that runs, it needs to have been triggered by some type of event. So when the world starts, that's an event. Do my first method. That's this down here. Later on, when we create interactive worlds, you can have let the arrow keys move a subject. You can have let the mouse move the camera. You can do while something is true, when a key is typed. So, you can have a character when you hit space, he jumps. So when a key is typed, you could do when space is typed, do the jump action or jump method. So down here we have our method editor, and this is where you're going to be doing all of your coding. So this is one of the main views. Now this green button over here, add objects, this button is actually really important, and it's one of the main things you're going to have to try to remember from this lesson. As you can see right there, this button will open up the object gallery and layout tool. That's kind of a separate view, and this is where you can add things to your world. Now notice we still have our object tree, we still have object details, but this side of the screen looks a little bit different. Over here we have our, again, we have the preview window. It's a little bit larger though, because when we're in this view, it's when we're setting the scene. We're adding things, we want to get a better look at it. And over here we have different movement tools that allow us to move objects up and down, turn them left and right, resize them, make copies of them. We can hit quad view to look at the world from different angles. And this is really important because you're working in a 3D space, but your screen is probably 2D. So sometimes it's hard to judge distances. Affect subparts. This comes in handy when you have an object that has legs and arms and you want to just move the arm. You can hit affect subparts to allow you to do that. Right here we have the gallery. This allows you to just look at all the different objects that Alice already has built into it. Now you actually can make your own models, but I don't recommend it. This is a programming course. This is not 3D modeling course. So there's quite a few things in here, so you can pretty much make anything you want. So I went to home. If you ever find yourself at that screen, just use the local gallery. And everything is organized in folders. The folders are in alphabetical order. So if you hit medieval, you have even more objects, and these are also in alphabetical order. And you can add anything you want to the world. Just you can click on the object and it adds it to the world, or you can just drag it up there, whatever you want. I'll go more into adding things in a 3D space and how to manipulate them in a future lesson. I just want to show you the interface. When you hit now this button, again, very important. If you want to go back to the other view, you hit done. Now you can code. So one important thing I want you to remember is you go to this view to set up your world. You go to this view to code your world. So that's pretty much the interface.